and welcome. I'm Laura Briggs with the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast, where I'll be talking all things running, health and fitness, and what it means to be an active vegan. Legendary vegan Fiona Oakes is my next guest. She's an elite marathon runner, and she's won the North Pole Marathon and the Antarctic Ice Marathon, and holds 4 Guinness World Records in endurance running. She eats just 1 meal a day and has been vegan since the age of 6. Her reason for running? It's for the animals. She runs Towerhill Stables Animal Sanctuary, where she looks after more than 500 animals, together with her trusty sidekick, Percy. Hello, Fiona.
Hello, how are you?
I'm really well, thank you. All the better for speaking to you today.
Thank you.
You loving these bright, sunny days, aren't you, Fiona, I imagine?
I am absolutely adoring them. I tell you, you spend all the winter just hoping for these few months when you can just like max out in the better weather and, you know, run and cycle and swim and look after the animals, and it's not raining. And well, it has been raining, I must admit, but it's warmer and it always dries up and there isn't the mud everywhere. So I'm really, really in my element at the moment.
And I read or heard you saying somewhere, Fiona, that you get up about 3:30 a.m. Is that still the case?
It's still the case, yes, I do. It's just something that I've done for decades now. I enjoy, I think it's a blessing to be able to greet, it's like a veil being lifted on the night and then seeing the magic of the world around you appear. And the same in the evening time, if you see what I mean, at dusk, it's like, you know, the world transcends into darkness again. And I always feel very blessed in the morning that I can get up and experience another cycle, another 24 hours again. And I don't always, you know, sort of jump out of bed and think, you know, oh great, it's 3:30, I can get up. But what I try to do is, if I'm not feeling very kind of motivated, I'll kind of look, or literally think of 5 good reasons why I am so lucky to be able to do this before I get up, and it always works. But you kind of guilt trip yourself, and you think, how blessed are you to have a body that will allow you to just take on what I'm going to take on in the day, you know, whether it be like a 20-mile run or you know, just looking after the animals. Physically just so lucky when so many people aren't. So yeah, it always works, and I enjoy a long day, getting the most out of life, because it is very short, and the older you get, you realize that. So I just want to pack as much in, and so it just works to be able to get up very, very early. The animals like it. It suits their regime. It suits me. So if it's good, you know, keep doing it.
I really admire your work ethic, and I love the way that you can motivate yourself to get up at 3:30. I definitely try and get up early. I very much would love to be kind of maybe a 5:30 girl. But yeah, I find it tough. So having those little motivational lines maybe might help me. And it seems that you really are driven to get up early and to seize the day because of the animals, a lot of it. Is that right?
It's definitely because of the animals. I mean, I originally started the routine when I actually worked in London, and I worked in merchant banking. This is decades ago. And it was the only little bit of free time that I knew I would definitely have, was before I actually went to work. So if I wanted to do any training or whatever I wanted to do, I had to do it then, because it was one of those jobs where, you know, documents were always coming in late. You tended to have to work very late. It was a bit of a profession where it was bums on seats. You know, you were expected to work long hours. So that bit of free time that I had was always very early in the morning. So I utilised it. I used to go out cycling, do a long bike ride, then cycle into work. And then I knew that whatever else happened in the day, I'd done my training. And it kind of, you know, when I got the sanctuary back in you know, kind of the 90s, it continued on. And I'd become used to it. It was just part of my regime. My body had adapted to it. And it works very, very well, especially with the you know, the volume of work that I have to get through every day. It's just maximizing the hours in the day. But funnily enough, people do ask me, well, how do you keep going all day? You know, and I say, you know, I don't do the same thing all the time during the day. So for instance, I don't rest in terms of sit down and have a break. But if I've been doing something kind of very physical like running, I might then, instead of just chilling out doing nothing, I'll do some computer work, which is mentally demanding but not physically demanding. And then I'll go to something that's more physical, such as looking after the animals, but it's not as physically cardiovascular demanding as running. And that's the kind of way I compartmentalize it all. So I keep going, but it's with different disciplines working, if you like, same within sport, different muscle groups, but the muscle groups including the mind as well. So yeah, it's a jumbled up day. And when people have been here, when Keegan came to make the film, running for good, I actually asked him, do you want to stay at Sanctuary with me? And he said, no, I don't want to. A, I don't want to upset your routine, and B, I don't want to get up at 3:30. Yeah.
Which seems very reasonable, actually.
Yeah. Yeah.
It must, though, Fiona, getting up at 3:30 and being busy, whether it be using your mind or your body, looking after the animals, having those extra hours in the day surely got to benefit you in terms of the running that you do and the competitions that you take part in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it does. I mean, everything is relative. And when people write to me and say, "Oh, I don't run as fast as you. I'm never going to run sub 2:40 in a marathon. I'm never going to be able to do it." It's all relative on what you want to achieve. So now, for instance, today, when I've done this call, I'll probably go out and run 20 miles with my pack because I'm training for a race that's self-sufficient. Um, it's just what you're used to. That doesn't seem like a great challenge to me. I'm quite looking forward to it. It's under 3 hours of running, and it's something that I can fit in very easily. As I said, because we've got daylight hours up to 9 o'clock, it's a lot easier. But yeah, I mean, I like to be the best version of myself that I can possibly be, whether it be running, whether it be looking after the animals, whether it be doing, computer work, writing stuff. It's just about getting the most out of myself. I enjoy that. I enjoy challenging myself. So yeah, I mean, obviously, a lot of the races that I run, especially the longer distance stuff, it is about mental discipline. Physically, you've got to be relatively fit, but the mental stuff really comes in. You've got to be able to push yourself, know how to keep going, know how, if you're feeling you're going into a dark place, know how to get through it. And the challenges of every day for me are pretty much like that. So it's not too much different when I find myself in a desert or at the North Pole. Like, hang on a minute, this is what I do. Just get on with it, Fiona.
Have you always had that mindset, or is that something that you think you've worked on over the years? Does it come naturally, or have you just had to build that up?
I think it probably comes naturally, and I think tracing into my ancestry, I'm not going to go into some long convoluted thing. I mean, my granddad was very much like me. I mean, I can see a lot of myself in my granddad. He was very much like that. So it's probably something I've inherited from him. In my formative years, probably I can't really. I've always been, yeah, I have actually always been very, very focused. If I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it, and nothing is going to dissuade me. It's been gut instinct, just a gut instinct in me, rather than some kind of learned or considered thought process. I did adopt a vegan diet when I was very, very young, 6 years old. And people say, "Oh, did you come from some flamboyantly bohemian background, where veganism was just part and parcel and extra?" No, I didn't. I actually came from a very kind of mainstream and kind of mundane background. Mum was a pianist, then she became a nurse. Dad was in the mining industry. And I didn't I didn't say to my mum, "I want to become vegan." I didn't know what the word vegan was at 6 years old. It was the principle. I didn't want to harm animals. I'd been vegetarian since I was 3. And I just knew that I didn't want to hurt my sister or my parents or my grandparents. So I just see animals as my extended family. And it was just something very kind of fundamentally obvious to me to not eat them. If you love them, why would you eat them? I wouldn't eat my sister if I was hungry, so I wouldn't eat a, a cow or a camel or anything. It just seems so obvious. But it's all been through kind of it just gut instinct. It's never been anything contrived. There isn't anything contrived in my life. And people, I didn't set out, thinking at 6 years old, I must become vegan, and then, I must have an animal sanctuary. I mean, obviously, that was always the big dream. And then I must become a firefighter, and then I must set some world records in marathon running. It's kind of organically grown. It's just and during the lockdowns, when a lot of people have turned to kind of the internet and social media, and a lot, I think there's been a lot of confrontation on there. I've gone more into contemplation. I've used my running to go out just for hours and hours and hours, and probably look back and kind of take a bit of a rain check and think, why did I do all this? What was going on in my mind? Because I've never really stopped to think. If it feels right, I'll grab it and literally, so not to make too much of a pun, run with it. And that's what my life's been about.
I find it really interesting that you went vegan at the age of 6.
Mm,
Certainly on a personal level, and a lot of other vegans who maybe became vegan later in life
mm,
have said to me, and I would certainly kind of mirror their views on this, that having parents who aren't vegan
mm.
kind of, for me, made me maybe not question what I was doing. And you
Yeah.
had that strong will and that awareness at such a young age that actually this isn't right. Whereas a lot of
Yeah.
children are kind of, it's sort of, I suppose, an indoctrination, isn't it? You just do it because your
Yeah.
parents did it. So to actually kind of buck the trend and say, no, this is not for me, that takes a lot of, a lot of
It
strength, actually.
it does. And I'm not going to deny that part attributed to that is my mum. Because obviously my mum she's the person I've always been closest to. I mean, my mum gave birth to me. She understands me, and my mum always said that for some reason she knew I was different. I've got an older sister, Alison, and she's much more kind of she's quite academic. I mean, I was never what would considered amazingly bright at school. Alison always was, and I remember when I went to school, went to the same school as Alison, but she was in a year ahead of me. She's older than me. Um, One of the teachers commented to my mum. She said, "Fiona, yes. Well, let's put it like this: you haven't got another Alice."
Oh,
And my mum said, "Thank goodness for that." And but I kind of have always been very headstrong. I was always different. I mean, my auntie Nancy always recognised that. She was my great aunt. She'd always lived on the land. She knew I was different. But my mum, I wouldn't say understood it particularly, but she understood it was something that was part of me. Dad, not so. He was dead against it. Grandparents, absolutely against it. Mum was very, very lucky. I said my mum was a pianist. She wasn't a flamboyantly good. She was a piano teacher. She was relatively good, but not good enough to become a full time, kind of, concert pianist or anything like that. But she went to a grammar school in the 1950s, and one of her teachers at the school, a music teacher, was a vegan lady, and she knew actually Donald Watson, and she remained in touch with this lady, and she was able to articulate to my mum in adult terms what veganism was about, what I was likely to be feeling, how to help me, how to encourage me. So we were very, very, very lucky to have that role model, and also a supportive mother who didn't insist that I was wrong. And believe you me, I think every parent that she ever came across said, bar one actually, bar one older lady, said if it was my daughter,
mm.
I'd make her eat meat. And the time that we really got problems with this was when I started to go into hospital for my operations, my orthopedic operations. And at that point in time, veganism was aligned to an eating disorder, such as anorexia or bulimia. And my mum was accused of child abuse. And that was
Gosh.
very difficult because I have said that at that point, my mum was only a student nurse. And so, it was very, very difficult as a student nurse to have a daughter that was going into hospital on a vegan diet, and then the people who were actually superior to my mum, more senior to my mum, saying she was abusing her own daughter.
That must have been very
But
difficult for your mum.
very, very difficult. But she always stood by and said, the real abuse and cruelty would be to lie to her and to look back and find that she despised me because of it, because I'd done wrong, because I hadn't allowed her to be who she is. And so, I am very lucky to have had, so I do totally understand. I don't know how it would have been without my mum's support. And indeed, to this very day, my mum is still, but she lives with me. Mum and dad live with me. Dad's very, very poorly now. We nurse him 24 hours. He's totally bedridden. But my mum still does all the cooking. Mum's like a mini me. She's very, 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 very independent, very strong, and we stick together, and it was very natural to us. She knew that there was something about me and animals from a very, very, very young age, and I suppose it's the kind of things that parents notice. Mum probably noticed that Fiona isn't playing with conventional toys. She's like making a little stable for a cow all the time, or she wants, rather than buy, my sister was like into, I don't know, Girls World or dollies or whatever. Fiona was always wanting a piece of green baize where she could put little horse figures on it, So, as parents, obviously they pick up on things like that. But yeah, I have to, it resonates with me when people say, that their parents don't support them, and you tend to want to please your parents and do as they ask. You don't want to upset anyone, so you tend to go with what they tell you. But likewise, when people do say that the only regret they have with veganism is that they didn't go vegan earlier, that kind of also resonates with me, because I feel very, very blessed that mum kind of, I say, allowed me to do so.
I mean, also, as transitioning to a vegan much later on in life, you come up against all sorts of prejudices, as you will have known because you've been doing it for so long. But as a child, to face that, must have been even tougher for you to kind of stand your ground and say, no, actually, this is why I'm doing it.
I was very, I didn't have many friends at school. I was taken out of school at probably 13 because of my operations. Literally, I was in and out of hospital all the time, and pretty much homeschooled, but I wasn't schooled. I was actually literally, Alison, my sister, did help me because she was a very clever girl. So she helped me with things like Latin and stuff like that. And I just had those revised GPE at home books, and I had to get on with it. I just had to get, it was a very, very troubled time as well, actually, because my father was he was on strike a lot of the time. So money was very, very short in the family. We were completely dependent on my mum's wage as a student nurse and then as a nurse. Very, very difficult times. But actually, looking at what some people have to face and the challenges, it was nothing. Obviously, but to put it into context, people were my peer group, my parents' peer group, they were losing their homes. We were asked if we could afford food and if we needed to go to a soup kitchen for food, stuff like that. So it was quite challenging. But I it is what it is. And I always think that we're very, very blessed in this country. Sometimes we overlook blessings we have, and we fixate on the things that we don't have rather than appreciating the things that we do have. So it was difficult as a child, but I mean, I'm not gonna, probably shouldn't say this, but I didn't attend school a lot. I didn't get on with school very well. I wanted to be outside all the time. I wanted to be doing things with my hands. I wanted to be doing things with animals. I just wanted to be in nature all the time. So I was a little bit of a loner as a child, but hey ho, that's just part of the fabric that makes up me. And I don't resent the fact that I was hospitalized for a lot of my teenage years. You accept it and understand that it's part of what has made you who you are, and the main thing is to be the best version you can of yourself, and that's what I try to be. And so all these little kind of events that have happened have led to making the person that I am right now, and I try to be, I hope that is giving the best positive impact on this planet and those who inhabit it for as long as I can.
That's a brilliant philosophy, and it certainly, comes across that it's made you a much stronger person. With the hospitalization that you've touched on, that was for your knee, is that correct? So can you tell us a little bit about your knee and how that impacts on your running now?
Yeah, I mean, I was. It was a long time ago. Firstly, I mean, it was before people forget, before the internet, before social media, before Google search what's wrong with my knee, before chat groups, before any of that. So you're very much relying on mainstream um, medicine. And it was started off as basically just a condition that, like an orthopedic condition, that very, very sporty kids tended to go. And it got worse and worse and worse. I had multiple operations, surgeries on both legs. And in the end, we just went to the consultant and said, look, the kneecap is just completely crumbled. It's got to come out. This is going to be really, really difficult. It's a very, very painful operation, major operation. And you probably will never walk properly again, let alone be able to do some of the activities that you've done, such as running. So it was pretty devastating at the time, but I think it was so painful and it was causing so much problems to me. I was on crutches all the time that I kind of thought, I just want to get it done and get on with life. I just want to be able to kind of move forward from this. I don't want to be going to the hospital every 6 weeks and having it looked at and, non-weight bearing in plaster again, go home and come back in 6 8 weeks and we'll have another look inside. I didn't want that anymore. So it went on and on and on for about 4 years. And after that, the first thing on my mind wasn't running. I mean, to be honest with you, people laugh and say, I am not, I don't consider myself to this day to be a runner. I'm just somebody advocating for animals through athletics. I only stumbled upon running after the operations, after the surgeries, when I moved to Oxford to do a training course and then to London to work. I was into cycling because it was no impact. It was literally a fairly safe sport to do if you've got this kind of knee injury. Both legs are quite weak, but the right one is very weak and dislocates very, very easily. Um, so I couldn't have been further away from running at that point. In 1996, when I managed to kind of fulfill what I thought would be a dream forever, but never a reality, and sort of managed to scramble together the funds to get the sanctuary. And I didn't set the sanctuary up, I always say, as a sanctuary in terms of it was actually a place for the animals that I'd already rescued. Towerhill Stables came about because I was literally working in London and rescuing horses and dogs and cats and chickens and keeping them at the little property that I got. Not the horses, they were a farm that I rented a field from. And then one of the horses, an ex-racehorse called Oscar, that I've been rehabilitating, he had an accident in the field. And I used to cycle to work, do the horses, cycle home, do them on the way home. And I came home one night, and 7 of the horses were in the field. 6 came to me, and Oscar didn't. And I found that he'd become impaled on a fence, and he nearly lost his life. He was at the vet for 13 weeks, and it transpired. Somebody told me that the person who owned the property had allowed people to go and shoot rabbits in the field where my horses were. Oscar was a racehorse, ex-racehorse. He was quite highly strung. He'd become very, very nervous and bolted into a fence, and his hind leg it was nearly hanging off. And he went to the vet, and at that point, my whole family said, "Look, we can't go on with this. We've either got to stop keeping, equines, or you've got to have somewhere that you can have them on your own terms." And at that point, everybody just rallied round. My great aunts, my grandparents, everybody put in what they got and managed to scramble together the deposit for Towerhill Stables. And I took all the animals that I'd rescued to that point to and it was their sanctuary. That's when I started to rescue a few more animals, but it wasn't. I realized that, what, I could rescue, 40, 400, 4,000, but there's billions out there suffering, and I can't help them. Sanctuaries are great. They are the answer for the animals that you can literally take out of abhorrent situations where they've been cruelly treated or exploited, and give them one-to-one care. So for them individually, it is the answer. But moving forward on a larger scale, the answer is to stop the need for sanctuaries, stop animals being exploited, so you don't need to rescue them, in effect. And so after a while, I thought, well, what can I do? What can I do to address this situation? I mean, the bad press. I mean, there was literally hardly any press about veganism. I mean, I don't know if you can remember that this explosion of the word vegan, it's come about in the last literally few years. Um, 25 years ago, nobody had hardly heard what a vegetarian was, let alone a vegan. And all I knew is that I was fit, strong, healthy. I mean, I was in by this point I joined the fire brigade. It's a retained service, so you it was actually something that, funnily enough, somebody had seen me out, and he called me over and said, you look really, really fit. Why don't have you ever thought about joining the fire brigade? And I thought, that's a bizarre question to stop somebody after. And he said, look, we've got a retained fire brigade locally. We're looking for recruits. One of the main criteria that people struggle with is the fitness level to get in the brigade. Come down and see what you think. I went down to the fire station that Monday evening, and it's a very, very male orientated world. It was the only female firefighter in the whole division on the retained side. And I felt a little bit, kind of, I don't know, out of place down there. But I do enjoy that kind of activity, that kind of sort of more physical activity. So in the end, I decided to join the fire service, because it gave me an opportunity to raise awareness and bring awareness to a group of people and an organisation that had probably not given too much thought about veganism in the past. Indeed, when I went down for the first physical recruitment assessment, I remember that halfway through the morning, they brought out a tray of drinks, and there were tea and coffee. Unfortunately, there was milk in all the tea and coffee, and I declined and asked if I could have a glass of water. And there was a little bit of questioning went on, and the guy, the sub officer taking the session, said, "What is wrong with you?" And I said, "There's nothing wrong with me. I'm just vegan." And the kind of whole he's been quiet. And he just came and pressed his face into mine and said, "Oh, one of those." He said, "The last one of those we had down here lasted 3 hours. But that was a man, so I don't give you long." And that kind of, so, I'll show
Lit the
you.
fire in your belly.
Yeah, literally, yeah. And anyway, it just gave me an opportunity in a very, very kind of softly way to show, it's a very, very kind of considered physical profession, that, as a vegan and as a woman, I could do it just as well as the men. But after that, I thought, okay, what else can I do? And I thought, I am physically strong, and it kind of annoyed me that when veganism actually got any press, it was always negative press. And I wanted to make it positive and say, actually, I've been plant-based for decades now, even at that point. And look, I'm not keeling over. I'm physically strong. I'm physically fit. The reason I turned to running was that literally female sport, actually doesn't get the attention that the men's sport tends to get anyway. But at that time, the buzzword was the marathon because of Paula Radcliffe. She was running really, really well in the marathon, world records, and so it got kind of all the, if you like, euphemistic hashtags attached to it. It's brutal. You've got to be physically and mentally strong and disciplined and endurance and extreme. You got all those. And I thought, if I could just compete in and hopefully complete a marathon, even if it's really, really slow or whatever. I mean, it's a big challenge. Then it shows that, being, plant-based, living on plants your entire practical life, is not going to be prohibitive to doing anything. If I can do the most kind of arduous and extreme event in the athletics calendar, as it was considered at that point, I'm sure you can, get off the sofa and make a cup of tea or whatever you want to do as a vegan. And it was always this idea that, vegans look as if they've been dug up from somewhere, or, like you're literally going to be, you're going to struggle to survive, let alone thrive. And so, I thought, well, I wonder if I could just like jog for 26 miles. And that is literally how I started. Just jogging and then jogging a bit further and jogging a bit further and then trying to jog a bit further, a bit faster. So I do get it when people ask for advice, couch to 5K. I understand all that because that's exactly how I started. And it was all trial and error, a lot of trials and a lot of errors. After I'd, decided I'd try one or two little local shorter distance races, 10Ks, and started to win those. Somebody did say, trying to train for a marathon, you want to get yourself a coach. And I thought, well, that's a good idea. Somebody who can advise in what you have to do to not just obviously get through the distance, but how do you get the maximum out of yourself in the distance? How do you improve your pace? What do you have to do? And as I said, this is before you could like Google search runners world sub 3 hour marathon training plan. It wasn't there the information wasn't online. And I did approach one or two people. Indeed, one or two coaches did approach me at clubs that I used to attend, just local running club. But they said, look, it's a waste of time because on a plant-based diet, you're not going to get the nutrients you need, and you're not going to have the physical strength to take the punishment that your body will have to take and recover and repair from to get where you want to go, which was like, originally I just wanted to compete a marathon, but after I'd competed and completed a marathon, I then started to look and think, well, what do you have to do to get on the championship start of London? After that, what do you have to do to sub 3? And then I really set my goals high. And what do you have to do to stand next to Haile Gebrselassie on the front grid of the Berlin Marathon? And but obviously, my diet, it was never up for compromise. So I've had to do it all on my own. I've had to self-coach. I've never had any physio. I've never had anything, actually. I've really never had any of the kind of gadgets and advice. And I don't, even today train with any kind of technology. I've got the older Timex Ironman watch on, literally it's all in my head, pace, everything. I've just learned to become very self-reliant to get where I am. I'm not a great runner. I'm not, really quick. I'm not really strong. I've got the most horrible running style you could possibly ever imagine. In fact, when Keegan made the film, he approached me in about 2016 and said he wanted to make this film about me. And I thought it was absolutely ludicrous, ridiculous, and just a joke to start with. And it kind of went on, and Keegan came to film, and and then he kept sending me kind of clips of the film. He was really excited about it. But I'm quite shy, if you like. I don't want to look at myself on the small screen. I don't want to look at myself particularly. I'm not that kind of person. So I kept saying, yeah, I'm sure it's all fantastic, Keegan. You're in charge. I'll just go with what you want. And when he actually invited me out to Hollywood with Rich Rolls, it's cinema full of people, to see this film, Rich Roll came over to me and said, because he narrated it, you must be really, really, thrilled and, and excited. I said, what do you mean? And, about the film, and it looks great, doesn't it? And I said, don't know, I haven't watched it yet. And he just looked at me and said, you've come out, you haven't even watched the film. I said, no. Why would I want to watch myself on a small screen? I'm dreading watching myself on a big screen. It was like the worst thing I could possibly imagine. And I kind of calmed myself down, because he dragged me to the front of the auditorium and sat me next to him and said, look, you're going to sit with me and you're going to watch this film. And it was like all peeking through, like Percy covering my eyes up, and it was like really, really difficult. And I thought, look, calm down. You can't look that bad. You've got all the gear on. Keegan's a great director, a great cinematographer. You're in this spectacular setting. And then I just looked and thought, oh no, you look awful. You're just limping along. I know I limp. I know I haven't got great style. But I have got a lot of physical. I'm strong, but more than that, I'm mentally very strong. So I literally have worked extremely, really hard over many, many years through discipline and kind of determination and dedication to be the best version of a somebody running. I won't say a runner, somebody who is running that I can possibly be.
I think a lot of your appeal to other runners, Fiona, must be the fact that you are really unassuming and that you are very down to earth. And it's very refreshing as a runner to hear from somebody who is so successful to say, do you know what? I don't have a coach. I don't have physio. I don't use a watch. We have a tendency, don't we, a lot of us, to really add problems to something that maybe wasn't there in the first place, to overcomplicate running. Do you think that's the case?
I think so. I like to run because it is very pure. It's a very pure form of exercise. You put on whatever you're going to run in, and you go out and you run. And I think you are absolutely correct. Complicating it, setting ridiculous goals, stressing out over things inhibits your running. The gadgetry, I mean, obviously, when I started, it was like, have you got a pulse monitor? And, I mean, that was the big thing, the pulse monitor. No, I can quite clearly hear my heart banging in my ears. You know, panting. I mean, I think, we have the most at the moment. We do, with a so-called sophisticated computer built in about a person in terms of your brain. So my mantra has been to learn to use that in terms of, okay, you can have some sort of thing on your wrist that's bleeping away, but it doesn't know if you've had a good day. It doesn't know if you're upset because, say dad's been very, very poorly, or one of the horses is down. It doesn't know those things. You do. So compensate that in, and calibrate that into your running. You know if you're running well, you know if you've got a problem. And I think just to downloading spreadsheets and all that thing, I'm not saying it doesn't work for some people. It might be great for some people, and it might be that motivates them to get out there, in which case go for it. But for me, no, it's all about being able to be out there without the gadgetry. When I'm out, I don't tend to listen to music or anything like that. I like to, you know hear my literally own heartbeat, feet on the ground. I like to look around. I like to listen to nature. I like to listen to the waves lapping. And I do actually, on a more serious note, I like to be kind of spatially aware when I'm out running, because anything can be going on around you, and I think sometimes you've got to be very, very aware. But yeah, I think keep it simple. Keep it simple with the running. Keep life simple. We do overcomplicate things, and we stress about things which we've got no control over. It's like funny story is when you get out to races such as Marathon des Sables, and you've spent all this time preparing for it, packing for it, training for it, worrying about it, worrying about going, worrying about not being able to go. And you arrive out there, and you have all your bag checked, and your body's checked, everything's checked. And then you toddle off back to your tent with your road book. And that road book is quite a big thing. And you start to look at the road book, and you can hear literally people cries of kind of like, oh my no, look what day for, look at the long stage. Oh, there's a big climb in the long stage. And oh, look at day 5, and look at day 2, and look at the distance. And people said to me, Fiona, are you going to read your road book? And I said, not really, no. Why not? I said, well, can't do anything about it right now. I can't suddenly think, oh, there's a big jebel on Wednesday. I better go and do a bit of jebel climbing to train. All I can do is actually make it worse. It might not be as bad as you think it's going to be. You can wind yourself up over stuff that you've got no control over, and just waste energy doing so. I am just going to sit and take it as it comes. I don't think I'm going to be like out of the front of the race with the Moroccans in this race. So I'm just going to literally one foot in front of the other and meet each challenge as best I can when I come to it. And that's pretty much the way I head with my life. At the end of the day, you can only do what you can do. Obviously you've got to plan to a certain extent, but just whatever way you can get through things, get over them, round them, under them, but just get through it. And that's pretty much the same with running, with whatever I'm doing. I'm very, very good also at just doing mundane tasks for a long time, just focusing. And I find it actually quite relaxing to just, if I've got something to do, like a long run, or I've got loads and like 4 hours of shoveling muck, I'm just very good at going out and doing it. Just accepting that it's got to be done, and sitting around and wasting time stressing over it is not productive. Just go and do it. And it's, what, it's never really as bad as very. I mean, I dread some runs. I do say, oh no, I've got to go running. Oh no, so anything can distract you from the potential prospect of going out, something you might see on television, or I dare say social media. But it's rarely, very rarely, as bad as you think it's going to be. So it's just about getting the clothes on and getting out there and doing it.
And you take pleasure in the simple things, which is lovely. And I think everybody can kind of maybe take a leaf out of your book and, remember that we have more than we think we have, and we are luckier than we think we are, aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, that's when people do ask me, the intricacies of my diet, and it's like, I don't know. I eat what's there. Mum cooks it. If I eat seasonally, what's available. I'm going to say what's cheap, because I haven't got a lot of money, but obviously I'm not got huge coffers. I'm not a professional sports person. This is what I always say. I've got my little Patreon page. Proceeds go to the sanctuary, and it's just like, this is a day in the life of Fiona. And some of the runs, I mean, I'm posting pictures when I've done my running, and it's just like, oh, what has she been doing? Has she been out in a force 10 gale and beaten up by a gorilla? I mean, what is going on there? But that's how I actually look when I finish running, and I don't fabricate, I don't filter anything. It's as it is, as it happens, raw, pure, core. That's me. And so with the food, protein. Where do you get your protein? Where do you get your amino acid? Where do you get I don't know. I mean, I've roughly got an idea because, obviously we all know that, beans and, stuff like that. But it's very basic. And I'm blessed for that. I don't have any of the replacement products. I've never seen a need for anything like just like meat or, sausagely or anything. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm just saying, for me personally, I've never had those products. I've never actually had them in the first place, so I don't need to replace something that I've never had. But I look at other aspects of food that people sometimes overlook, and I think certainly with the unrest there is in the world today, we are guilty of doing this. So, for instance, I eat food. I'm not worried where the next meal's coming from. I eat food that's prepared with love and eaten with the same love and respect, i.e. from my mum. I've still got my parents, so that, even at this, I'm very, very blessed. I don't live in a war-torn area. I haven't been displaced from my home. I'm not worried about famine. I'm not worried about water poverty. Well, I am. I'm worried about it for other people, and certainly worried about how it's going to impact. But on a day-to-day basis, these aren't fears, very, very real living fears of having the tap to turn on and nothing comes out. I think that's what I like about the self-sufficiency races, the week long, where literally you have to carry everything you're going to need, food, supplies, medicals, everything on your back for the whole week, because it's a real acute reminder of how precious every little resource is. If you find 2 extra sheets of toilet paper, you think you're on a real winner, in those races, and I think that these are things that we very, very often take for granted. It's very easy to do so when we have so many luxuries around us, and I'm talking like flushing toilets, and taps and hot water and a washing machine and those what we would consider very basic things that a vast amount of the world's population have never seen, have never had. So I tend to literally focus on those very, very basic things, if you like, knowing how lucky I am to have them. And only a short plane ride away, people don't have them. And so it seems very trite to kind of moan about stuff that actually doesn't really matter. What matters is the basic things in life, the things that we take for granted, that actually, I mean, it's like when you're trudging across your desert with your backpack and you're thinking, why on earth why did I enter this raid? What was I thinking? And if somebody stops and asks you, would you like a big bag of money or a bottle of water, you go for the water because that's actually got real value. And money and the things that it could buy that you perceive as life and death and you can't live without, have no real meaning when everything is actually stripped back to basics. It's the same with the animals. We are no different to the animals. We crave the same things, security, food, water, shelter, company, no fear, no pain. Those are the very, very basic things, and that's for humans and non-human animals alike.
I once heard you in an interview, Fiona, and I think somebody was asking a similar nutrition question, like, oh, when you're training for an ultra marathon, say, 30 whatever, 32 50k whatever, what's your nutrition plan? What food do you carry with you? And I think you'd said something like, oh, not much. It was literally like, I don't.
I don't, and this is where the problem I've always incurred. I have really had some problems, because you're encouraged to lie, basically, to tell people what is the conventional norm to tell them when it's not actually the truth, and then you kind of told off. You shouldn't say that, but if it's the truth, why can't I say it? So I do eat 1 meal a day. So 1 meal a day used to be, you what, you eat 1 meal a day? And then I've got a funny story though. When I was in I did a part of my world records, the marathon that I did for the Asian leg, I did in Oms, and I was there with the Kenyan and Ethiopian coaches and athletes, and they laid on a big kind of dinner for us, lunch, the day before the race. And one of the Kenyan coaches said to me, are you coming for the lunch? And I said, no, I don't eat lunch. And he said, oh, why is that? I said, I only have 1 meal a day. I dared tell him. And he said, oh, yeah. He said, tell me more. And I said, well, I just find it works with my training regime. Obviously, I've always been very, very basic in my running. So it's not just concentrating on what goes in. It's what comes out and when, because you've got to be able to you've got to, that's a big point of a marathon. If you need the toilet during a marathon, you're going to lose time. It's all about not losing time and managing yourself so you know your body well enough to not do that. And so he said, yes, a lot of the Kenyans do that. I said, do they? He said, yes, it's the warrior diet. And I kind of looked at him and I said, yes, I'm on the warrior diet. You know, no, it was warrior diet. It's just like convenient for me, and it just works for me. And or now it's been intermittent fasting, so it's all kind of cool. So I'm a world leader in intermittent fasting. It's just what worked for me, you know. So I truly, if I'm just running 20 odd miles today, I wouldn't dream of taking anything out with me to eat. I wouldn't even consider that I'd need food. And to be honest with you, I shouldn't say it, but I kind of got to say, I do carry water. I do carry it because it's ballast. I need to train with it. Very rarely stop for a drink. Very, very rarely. I'm very, very good at just plodding on. And that's what and you know, if you're going to be, I've spoken to, I have been very, very, it's a really, really weird life that I've led with my running, because I am literally the world's most amateur runner. I do not think about running until I've got to run. And when I make my little videos for my Patreon, I have to do them when I've just got back from my running, because it just goes out of my head. As soon as I've changed into my wellies, running's out the window. But I have literally been the person that's bolting around the house screaming at my mum, socks, you know, and like, they're in the washing machine, and you're dragging them out thinking, these will do another. They practically run up the road without me, you know. But I mean, I am that person. And then you might get an invitation from somebody like Jos Herman, who's Haile Gebrselassie manager, or Mark Milde at the Berlin Marathon, you know, inviting you to come to their race, and they'll pay expenses, and you'll be on the elite start. So you leave the sanctuary, you know, in your plimsolls with your vest into your knickers kind of runner, and you arrive to be greeted by some of the best runners in the world staying in their hotel, at technical meetings, you know, working out, you know, sort of when, you know, they're going to make their big push for, you know, the final 10K of the Berlin Marathon, and you're just thinking, please let me finish, and you know, the only pushing that's going to be going on at 30K for me is I'm likely to need pushing, you know. It's weird. And yeah, so I just lead this kind of very, very bizarre kind of juxtaposed life of from amateur to uber professional. But when I have mixed with truly some of the top runners like Gebrselassie, I mean, you know, he told me what he does for a sports drink, for instance. I was lucky enough on the Friday before the Amsterdam Marathon one year, you know, just saying that he makes his own little sports drink, you know, with one, you know, a bit of sugar, a bit of glucose rather, a bit of salt, some orange juice, and some water. It's as good as anything else. And a lot of the top runners do work on stuff like, you know, it's going to be tough in a race. It's going to get, I suppose, I don't know. I'm not going to flatter myself because I really am not into that. But you've got to have a special sort of mindset to be able to push yourself through the real pain of any sort of race, but especially the endurance races, because it goes on for so long, and everybody goes to dark places in a marathon and has doubts, or an ultra marathon. For me, the motive is literally getting the best out of myself so I can be the best ambassador that I can for veganism. And hopefully somebody might see what I'm doing and think, that person is vegan. She's walking into the elite enclosure. She must be good. Perhaps I can try that. Um, but if you don't train hard, you won't race hard. You can't expect yourself to race hard. You can't suddenly be, stopping and starting for snacks and water, and not going out if you feel that your toenail hurts, and then getting to a race and having the ability to say, look, I know I've broken my toes, because I did that one year, just a week before the marathon de Sable. I fractured 2 toes. I know I've got 2 fractured toes, and I know this is supposed to be the world's toughest foot race or whatever it's supposed to be, but I want to do it for the animals, and to have that ability to go and push through that pain where your bone's sticking out your little toe, whatever. You've got to be used to training hard, and I do. I don't ever lie and say that it's 100% when whatever I'm doing it 100%, or I'm going to move on and do something else I think I could do better, or is more productive for the cause that I'm out there and I believe in, which is encouraging people in a sympathetic way to consider veganism and to leave the animals and the planet alone, because actually it benefits directly them and other human inhabitants of this world. And I think leading by example and saying, I'm not judging you, I'm just showing you what I've done, illustrating it through actions, and perhaps this could be for
And
you.
that passion that you have for the animals and for veganism and for making that change has kind of made you become an accidental celebrity in a way, hasn't it? But it's helping others make change as well. So it's working what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, people ask a lot of people, if I am asked what's your proudest achievement within running, yeah, and I'm not yeah, it's very, very kind of difficult thing to explain. I'm not particularly proud of anything I've ever done, because I'm not happy with the reason that's got me out there. I mean, I've literally only ever run to promote veganism. Yes, I want people to be vegan, but I don't want the exploitation, the cruelty, and the abhorrent misery and torture that goes on with any sort of um, animal abuse or human abuse that is actually connected to it. So I'm not particularly um, proud to say of my physical running. I think the thing that I think has benefited most through the running is actually starting Vegan Runners back in 2004, and that was something that we did purely because of my running, really, because um, before that Peter Simpson and I were both in the Vegetarian Cycling and Athletics Club, which was the only club that bore any kind of resemblance of reason to why we were actually trying to run. And after I'd done my first marathon in London, and I'd kind of gone sub 3, and I'd come top 50, I think, or whatever. um we suddenly realized, actually, you do realize that, you're now going to be eligible to be on the start line with Paula Radcliffe, if you choose any of these races. What are we doing promoting vegetarianism when actually we could be promoting veganism? There's a massive opportunity to get a large audience of people who are already invested in their diet, in their kind of looking to perform better. And if they think that they can get some advantage by whatever it is, they probably take it. Why don't we start a vegan running club? And that's what we did in 2004. So after the London Marathon, then I was able to go off to Florence and run. I think I placed 5th overall in the Florence Marathon, proudly wearing my vegan runner top, and I got a lot of attention for that at the race, purely because you at the time you couldn't go around and introduce yourself to like 20,000 runners and say, hello, I'm Fiona Oakes, I'm vegan, hello, I'm Fiona. But by subliminally planting that word in people's minds. And I remember one year running up the mile, and I came top 20 in the London Marathon this particular year. And I remember over the tannoy, the male runners were bearing down quite quickly, and the helicopters were overhead. And I remember them over the tannoy saying, and the next runner in is a vegan runner. And I just remembered hearing as I ran up the mile alone the word vegan, and I thought, this is why I've done this. This is why I put myself through 5 months of horror training and the pressure to actually deliver in a marathon when you've got a specific goal in mind, you've got a time in mind, you really want to leave it all out there on the road is really, really hard. And was listening to Elliot Kipchoge talking after Berlin last year, and he was saying, whether I want to continue on running, it's something that I need to discuss with my family, because obviously he moved away from his family and went to a training camp, so that everyone was very like-minded, very focused, everyone was pushing each other. And it's a big commitment. It's a big denial, if you like, of your life. And to run 100 miles a week over 9 sessions every week in, week out for 4 months. Literally, I mean, when my niece was born, she was christened, and I didn't go because it was a Sunday, and it was a long way away, and I couldn't take the time away from my training for one of these big races. It is kind of, it's hard, and never letting a session slip, and always, knowing that you want to be improving, that you don't want to get injured. And then when you make it through the training period, then the taper period comes, and then you become like the world's biggest hypochondriac, in that you think you've got every, that disease under the sun. If somebody within 100 meters of you sneezes, you literally, don't come near me, don't come near me. I remember we were in a shop once that I was getting ready to go for a race, and somebody on the till behind, I think in front of me, sneezed, and I remember dropping all the shopping and kind of backing away. Get out of the shop, get out of the shop. I don't want to get ill, because you can't run to your maximum. You can't run the time you want to if you've got a cold. You can't run at all if you've got a cold, so you shouldn't do, but so it is a big sacrifice, but it was always worth it, because I was doing it for the animals. And when you put sacrifice into terms, then you start saying, actually, compared to what the animals suffer, it's nothing. Yesterday I've got my new little gadget, which is we've got a greenhouse, and I've got a treadmill in the greenhouse for training in hot weather. So yesterday I went out and did my 2 hours, because I have to stay in case Mum needs help with turning my dad, or if he's poorly, and she has to clean him. I have to be around, but so I don't want to be out the sea wall, a long way away. So I put this little treadmill into the greenhouse. So I do 2 hours on my treadmill. It was 115 degrees in there. And it was like, I thought, right, start steady, 12 kilometers an hour. Don't go any quicker than that, because you're going to be in trouble. And, I was thinking when I was in there, it was hot. But, in these chicken sheds and farrowing crates and horrible intense factory farms, what it must be like is absolutely incomprehensible. So when I thought, like when you get on your treadmill and you've got like 2 hours to do, and after 5 minutes you're doubting
every time I get on a treadmill. Yes.
And then you think, no, Fiona, actually in 2 hours this will be over, and you can have a nice drink, and these animals never ever escape that. So what are you moaning about? And that, honestly, the thought of their suffering, it's truly what drives me on. I don't particularly want to punish myself enough to just for a medal or a trophy or a Garmin or a time, and I don't want it that much. But I think if there's something that I can do to possibly, and it's no guarantees that the end of the race or the end of your life that you've made any difference at all, but at least you've got the satisfaction of knowing that you tried.
And I think your honesty about why you do it and the way you do it resonates with so many people. And personally, you've inspired me, and I know you've inspired hundreds, thousands and more of people to, if not become vegan, maybe reconsider, and start on that path. So I think from that perspective, you can say that you're certainly achieving what you set out to achieve.
Oh, I hope so.
We can't kind of end the interview, I don't think, without asking about Percy.
Oh, yeah, he's here with me. Yeah,
You must tell everyone
no,
about
literally,
Percy.
you can't. Yeah, trust me, you can't. No, little Percy, right? Okay, I like teddy bears. Yeah, I just like their cheery faces. They cheer me up, and Percy has been everywhere with me. It's just a little mascot of the site. No, I know Percy. You're not a mascot. He's an integral part. I get it a little bit mixed up. Percy gets invited to the races, and he lets me accompany him. You see what I mean? There's a difference there.
I love
And
it.
I make my little Patreon videos, and people have been saying, "You've lost weight, Fiona, but Percy's gained some." And actually, they do know that actually Percy has a body double. He's such a megastar now that he doesn't do the training himself. He's got a little friend, little identical bear that's much fatter than him, Frank, and he goes out to all the training rooms in my pack, and Percy comes on the adventures. There is a little bit of animosity between Frank and Percy over this, but Percy is, he calls it seniority because he's older.
That's so
So
funny.
he's just a little cheery bear that goes with me. And I don't know, to start with, I suppose that, years and years and years ago, it, it was a little bit of an icebreaker because when I first went to Marathon des Sables in 2012, it was the setup was slightly different. So you literally just got put into a tent with 7 other people, total strangers. Very often it was a very, very kind of male orientated world. So chances are that you're probably in with 7 men. And I remember one year, the first year I did it, a guy called Brett was walking around the camp saying, "Oh, you think your tent's bad? You want to try being in ours?" We said we've got a Scotsman, an Irishman, a Welshman, an Englishman, and we've got the vegan woman. It's like, Brett, And so everybody used to make fun that, oh, it's the vegan woman with the little teddy bear. She can't be all that bad. And Percy just like, and Keegan actually said to me, I really like the concept of Percy. He's a really good, clever, a kind of educational tool. I said, pardon? It's Percy. He's just my little friend, and I carry him, and he cheers me up, and he cheers everybody else up. And it is actually amazing in some of the most difficult situations I've been in. People see a teddy bear, and he kind of brings them together, and they smile. And I think anything that can engender a smile on anyone's face in such a kind of dour world, and it's got to be good. So Percy just travels with me, and everybody loves him. It's not just kids. I mean, and in 2013, when I broke the world record at the North Pole doing a marathon there, a guy in Brazil started the PSGs, which is the Percy supporter group. And he took a picture of himself with all his teddy bears. And now people do send me bears to join the Percy supporter group. So the houses are full of bears everywhere. And Percy's fan club. So, yeah, that's pretty much Percy. He is a member of Vegan Runners, but unfortunately, he's so small that his top only says eager runners because the V and the N is missing on the back. But, he's a little cheeky. He's probably my alter ego because Percy gets away with things that I can't get away with. But yeah, he's been on all my running adventures with me, and everybody knows Percy, and they all love him. So he's got to be good.
Certainly puts a smile on everybody's faces, that's for sure. And I have to thank Percy for letting me speak to you today, because obviously he was in correspondence with me. So,
yeah.
Fiona, it's been an absolute pleasure. I know you've got a 20-mile run to do now with no food or water. And a very busy day looking after all those wonderful animals.
Well, it's my favourite day at the sanctuary actually because feed delivery. So I get loads and loads of goodies brought in, and by Friday I have a big feed delivery every Friday. Always seems to be Friday. I think I'm living in Groundhog Day. It's always Friday, always a feed merchant. But I tend, when loads of carrots and hard feed, and I have ready grass and goodies come in, it always gives me that really, really warm feeling to see the feed store full up. And as the week dwindles, like Friday morning, it's getting desperate. They're thinking, oh no. But Friday afternoon, it's my favourite day because all the feed comes in. So I've got several tons of feed to unload when I get back from my run. But I do actually enjoy that kind of physical exercise because it's for the animals. But
and how can people support Towerhill Stables Sanctuary?
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest with you. I don't do social media a lot. I'm not very good, but obviously sharing stuff is always important because it widens the audience and people become, more au fait with what you do. They can support an animal here. We had the Marathon de Cows running at the minute. It's where they can literally go through and see all the cows that are at sanctuaries, well over 50, and pick, read their stories and support them. Fundraise, do a running event, just support, share. I mean, tell people, whether it's verbally or online about what we do. Um, Sadly, a lot of it now is just about keeping going financially. Obviously, with the downturn in, the economic situation globally, with the cost price rises of everything, with the insecurities on, we were always frightened of, feed going up and not having enough money to meet the bills. It's unfortunately it's all about that. But we battle on as much as we can. We will always do that for the animals, and we do have some wonderful supporters out there who are, really always do rally around and try to keep the sanctuary going. And just share what the work we do, and more than that, consider, I don't know, everything. The sanctuary, everything is about encouraging people to at least consider veganism, not just for, the benefits to themselves, but for the animals, the environment, for other human beings, for their footprint that they're going to leave for future generations. And that's probably the biggest thing that I could ask people to do. Consider being plant-based and all the benefits it brings. And it's a win-win-win situation. Obviously, my primary thing is to keep the sanctuary going, but I'm passionate about also encouraging others to follow in the same path, and to say that this lifestyle choice, it's beneficial, it's not prohibitive to anything. So if, for people to consider not harming each other, not harming themselves, not harming the planet, not harming the animals. That's more what it's all about for me.
Well, you're doing a great job advocating that, Fiona, and we really appreciate it. And thank you so much for your time today.
You're very welcome.
Thanks so much for listening, and don't forget to leave a review for the Vegan Fitness Runner podcast. Please subscribe if you don't want to miss an episode. And remember, you can find out more about all my guests and further information on all the topics covered over on the website veganfitnessrunner.com. Thanks again, and bye for now.